Hi, everyone. Welcome to Fin Factor. I'm your host, Blaine Bertsch, co-founder and CEO at Dry Run, where we help you forecast your cash flow, model scenarios, and figure out where your business is headed. And I'm really excited today to have joining me David Severe. I know David for a long time. He's CEO and chief educator at cashesclear.com, so you can find him there. I want to make sure I get the web address in so they can know exactly where to find you. Welcome to the show, David.
Thanks, Blaine. It's great to be back, and we've had quite a few conversations, but it's always fun to do one that's a recording so we can spread the wisdom. And I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Exactly. We've had some great discussions, and it's true. Sometimes it's like, should have recorded this. Not just to share it outside, but sometimes it's just should have recorded this so I could go back to it later and look at it because, man, I know like you are, we both are passionate about cash flow. You are such an expert in the area that I love talking with you, and there's always so much to learn. And you know, we were talking before the show, you have a great topic that we want to dive into today. And I just wanted you to just sort of dive in. Like, what do you want to talk about today that is, you know, close to your mind and close to your heart?
Well, what I'm really figuring out is that GAAP accounting is great for large businesses. They've got the experts there. They can figure it out. They can deconstruct it. But for small business owners who didn't go to business school, who didn't take 2 years of accounting, it's really, really tough for them to learn. And so cash, looking at cash, modeling cash, and having cash systems are so beneficial to these business owners who have a smaller business. Might have a fractional CFO, might have a fractional bookkeeper. They can set up systems for themselves. And that's what I've been trying to talk to a lot of people about.
Yeah. And, you know, we're both on the same page here, of course, and we've talked about it before. But like what we find is that like someone will get into business and, you know, the first few years even, it's like it's fairly straightforward to follow. And then you start getting a few more zeros. And when you start getting a few more zeros and you get up over that million mark and you start getting into the multi-millions,
yes,
it gets complicated really quick. But like you said, it's like, yeah, you may have a fractional CFO. You might have somebody like an in-house accountant or a controller. But it still comes all the way back to the business owner to truly understand what's going on, to make some of those critical business decisions. And until you get up to, I don't even know how big you are, until you can kind of separate some of that out as the owner. But you're talking a lot of zeros before you really...
A lot of zeros, yeah.
A lot of zeros, yeah. So, sorry, I just wanted to sort of get you to just dive in on this because it's a really great topic.
You know, I sit here and I say to myself, why is this such a big problem? Why are accountants... Sorry, I'm not picking on the accounting industry. I'm just making observations about what I see as reality. Where do they get trained? They get trained in universities. Who's funding the universities? The big accounting firms. So they are basically training the next generation, well, the next class of accountants going to the big, you know, the large ones and the regional firms. But where do the people from the large and regional firms go after 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years? They go and do their own, but they've been trained both at school, the CPA exam if they're CPAs, and now by their first experience at work, they have to stick to GAAP. And to try to understand that knowing when the cash is coming in is nothing to do with accounts receivable. It's based on reality. When it's going out has nothing to do with your accounts payable. It has to do with reality. Is really hard to program and deprogram. And so that's why I'm here trying to educate, because we've got wonderful tools like yours. But if they don't understand the modeling on a cash basis, then how to use that modeling, then the tool doesn't do very much good.
Exactly. It's we always talk about it being a mindset. And Grant, like, you know, accountants are, the reason we're talking about accountants because their financial foundation is so valuable for a business, but it's also a bit of that mindset that and training that is so much historical based. And if we can get them adding to their toolkit that forward-looking, that flexibility, that cash, cash basis finance, everyone's going to be better off because the business owners need them to step up and help them with that side.
It's true. And from what I've seen, accountants want to do this. Now, if it's a big enough firm they're working with, or even a fractional CFO, they get a client with a couple $1 million, $3, $4, $5 million, they can spend the money. It's the smaller clients, $1 million to $3 million. But even I've worked with $10 million companies that they just don't have the margins to hire administrative staff. Mm-hmm. But so most of the accountants I know, they're trying, at least to some degree, from looking backwards to looking forwards. But it's not easy. I've got somebody I work with, and he's great. He's really working hard. And we said, all right, we're going to analyze some financial statements and see what we can learn about this company's cash flow, just looking at a balance sheet and a P&L. The first thing out of his mouth is about tax issues. And he's been working with me for 8 months, 9 months. I said, Peter, are we trying to figure out taxes? Oops, cut that out. Okay. I said, hey, are we trying to figure out tax issues, or are we trying to figure out cash flow issues? So let's put that aside. It's really tough. He's a tax specialist.
Yeah, and it's amazing how often this conversation comes up with even some of our partners, and some of our partners from some really big firms. And I've mentioned this on one of my shows before, but one of our partners had talked about they stopped just sort of trying to force everybody into the same bucket, and they said what we're trying to do now is find those sort of the right fit. And one of the things that she mentioned is we're always looking for someone that's curious, because that was something they identified as the staff they had that were really successful in offering these forward-looking financial net were people that were just they were asking questions and learning about the business and understanding what the challenges were. And she goes, they're just curious. And that led them into being a really effective advisor.
That's a great point. I would add to that, they care. They care about their clients. They care about the client. They don't care about getting the reports out. It's a necessary evil, necessary good, actually, to get the reports out, but that's just the beginning. And they would like to learn how to help their clients, not just report to their clients. Mm-hmm. Yes. I'd love to give you an example, though, about the curiosity. So I was working with somebody. I had an engagement. I brought somebody in to fix the bookkeeping. And he later told me, this is a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, he said, David, I always thought I could figure out how the company runs by sitting at my desk and looking at the numbers. But you would get me to stand up and go walk around and talk to people and look at the warehouse, look at this. And I learned so much more by walking around and asking questions. He ended up going back to school and getting his MBA so he could be more involved. So that's the type of thing that you're looking for. Well, the training that often happens is also get outside your box, get off of the computer screen, and start asking questions. Yeah. And we've had some real painful sessions in my mastermind where I'll ask a question, or as I say, ask me a question about the financials, and then I'll sit. And I'll sit. And it's 60 seconds before they ask me a question. They're not sure what to ask. It's really interesting.
Yeah. It's something I always have to remind myself of too. It's amazing how much insight you can get, how much you can learn, how much you can leverage from your team and everything if you're asking questions. And and I know me, I have a bad habit. Like when it's almost like when there's pressure and the bullets are flying over your head, I'm like, follow me over the hill, come on. And I direct, right? Like and when things calm down, I'm better at asking questions and just kind of working through. And I know that about myself, and I'm going to show you this because you'll find this funny, this is on this little sticky note is up on my laptop just to remind me as I'm having conversations like, oh yeah, if I find I need to take that step back, and it's just a good reminder. It's like, no, let's take some time here. Let's ask some questions, and because it's probably the most powerful tool for not only for a business owner, but like I said, for advisors. It is the most powerful tool is simply to ask a question.
It's a great point, and bring it back to cash flow. I actually wrote this article that says keep digging. And if I'd love to connect to anybody who's listening on LinkedIn, that's where you can find this article. It's called Keep Digging. Your problem isn't what you think it is. In other words, people are usually focused on the symptoms, and you really cannot permanently fix anything until you really find out what it is. And it's not mine. It's other people have said it takes 5 whys to get to the root. Or I've heard somebody else say it takes 7. Why is this happening? Oh, because so-and-so is, filling out the form. Well, why are they filling out the form? Well, because so-and-so, did something.
Yeah.
And you dig and dig and dig, and that's when you have these huge breakthroughs on cash management, cash flow, cash maximization, is when you get to the root causes of what's really causing the cash shortfalls, what's really causing you to have to call people to pay their bills, what's really, all these symptoms we talk about, you've got to dig deep.
And, talking with business owners, too often I either hear it straight out of their mouth, or there's sort of this indication, this underlying idea that they go, yeah, cash flow is tough and it's brutal, but what are you gonna do? Like they have this feeling that it's just part of business. Literally, I think if someone was told me it's just part of business. It can be massively improved. You can't fix it all, but you can improve a lot, and boy, it ripples through your business to give you capital to do all kinds of stuff.
That is an indicator of the huge opportunity there is for accountants, bookkeepers. Accountants are the most trusted advisor in the United States. But if they don't know how to do this, and that's indicative, if the business owner is just saying, well, what do you do? It's because the accountant or bookkeeper, whoever's supporting them financially, is going, yeah, what are you going to do? Or you work on these little bits and pieces. And that's the opportunity to go deep and to learn strategies and to go beyond the headlines of these articles that are written for the purpose of selling the last strategy on the list, which is the person who wrote the article happens to have a piece of whatever, a product or service that's going to fix all your problems if you just implement it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we see it all the time.
You do. You do. And when I started doing some research, I was like, this is ridiculous. It's about 15 things being recycled. And I said, I bet you I can figure out 99 strategies to manage cash. And I wrote them out, and then I just kept going. I'm up to 212 as of this week. I added one more. And I'm not even trying hard anymore. It just, there's so many ways to fix things.
Like my experience was similar when I started, not long after I started Dry Run. We were writing articles, and I still have. I did a podcast with one of our clients today, but was a client at that time also with a different business, and he grew this business to over 100 staff. They were growing fast. He exited the business, and he said, "I still learned about managing cash flow through your blog." And that's how fast they grew. And it's like, there was not a lot of room for error there. And I remember, I got a big stack of my books back here, and I wrote my book just because when I was looking online, I'm like, you can find 1 million articles on cash flow. And literally they would say, it's really important. And then get a spreadsheet. And it wouldn't tell you what even to do with the spreadsheet. It would just kind of gloss over how you actually deal with your cash flow. And people are getting lost. You're not telling them anything. You're telling them you got a big problem, figure it out yourself. Literally, that's what it was saying, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I've put together, and I haven't written a book yet. It's on its way, not quite right. I'm constantly writing it. I just haven't identified what things I'm writing is going to go in the book. Yeah. But it's why I started, and I created significant coursework. Why? And some of it's for end users because they want to do it themselves. They can't afford to hire somebody. But some of it's really directed at professionals who say, no, I really want to be able to dig deep and figure out how to use strategies to help my clients dig out. One of the real big eye-openers is realizing how bad some of the advice is that's the common advice. Have you seen that?
I've cringed. Tell me some of your favorites, but I know I've seen them because I cringe all the time when I see advice. Some of it's just so awful, right? Like,
Well, if anyone ever says, sell more, let me help you sell more to improve your cash flow, that's a sales trainer. They have no idea what they're talking about because it takes money to generate sales. Yeah. And so that's a huge one that goes well beyond the standard industry practice, but it permeates everything. And one of the ways you know that is because what's reported on in the news when they announce earning reports? Top line and bottom line. Yeah. But it's not real. It's GAAP. It's all theory. Yeah. What's the real thing that an investor looks at, which is the same thing that somebody who's buying your company looks at? Free cash flow. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right? That's how you really can tell the health of the company, whether they can pay their bills. All right, so that's number one. Another one is, here are the strategies. Call your people, your payables, and get them to pay sooner. I don't have them off the top of my head, but that's a great example. Who's in control of that strategy?
Yeah, it's a necessary thing you have to do. It's not a strategy.
But who's in control of making that strategy work?
Oh, it's the people paying you. Yeah.
It's the client.
Yeah,
so here you go. You're the best strategy in the world, which is also, it's like number 2 after selling, get them to pay you. And it's like, no fooling, guys. But you're giving them all your control to your client. Well, great. Here's another way to improve your cash flow. Offer them a discount, like 5%. Well, does that really help your cash flow? It's like a drug. It helps you today. It feels good, but you've just shot yourself in the foot with 2%, 3%, 5%, whatever you spent.
Draining your profit. Yeah.
Draining your profit. So, but that's another one that shows up on these lists. And I'm actually right now doing a presentation. I'm creating it. It's called Exposing the Myths of Conventional Cash Flow, and in parentheses, wisdom. Mm-hmm. And I've got 8 or 9 of these myths that I'm just working with and going to be talking. I'm at a conference in May that I'll be talking at.
Yeah. It's so much of the things like we've got all kinds of content floating around everywhere, but what it is you're trying to build up a foundation. There's no quick wins. There's no quick easy answer. But if you change the way you monitor your cash flow, you understand what you're doing, you're changing your systems and processes, you start to learn from it and go, you know what, we're actually going to change how we are writing contracts. We're actually going to change on, let's get cash up front. Let's actually get cash when they're purchasing. There's all of these things that they can do.
Right.
But it's like you have to change the business and the systems and processes in order to really benefit from it. It isn't just like, here's your magic beans or your magic pill, right?
Right.
And
it's work.
It's work. But like your cash flow, your profit, your revenue, they're all tied together, right? Like they affect each other, and it's just you can't, it's like, yeah, well, pay him 5%. I'm like, man, the only reason I would ever say you could give a discount is like, if it's the only way I'm going to get this sucker to pay me, because I don't think they want to pay me at all. Like, it's like, that is Hail Mary pastime, right? Like that's what
it is. Yeah. I worked with a company, publicly held company. This is years ago. I think they're bankrupt now, but I'm still not going to mention which one it was. And I was in the sales and marketing department, but I got to be friends with the controller. And one day he takes me aside and says, hey, David, yeah, we're in tough shape. We're factoring. And our margins are so thin that the factor is taking our entire gross margin plus.
Yeah.
So we're actually digging a deeper hole. Mm-hmm. And man, he was the most stressed out guy in that building. And you got to be careful. There's easy answers that will usually land you in a deeper problem. Here's a public service announcement. Do you mind?
No, go ahead.
If anybody out there is thinking about taking a merchant cash advance, MCA loan, Don't do it. I've never seen a company with an MCA loan who's actually in good financial shape, but they will give it to you today and they'll give it to you fast, and they will then be your worst nightmare for the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
And you'll be in worse financial shape tomorrow.
Yeah. Now, I will tell you a story where factoring actually could have saved a business. Because I was sitting down, I was having a drink with a CFO that I met, and we were sitting down and talking, and he said he started telling me a story, and he goes, "This was the guys that I met after they had sold their business 10 cents on the dollar." And I'm down in Scottsdale right now, but I'm from Alberta. Alberta's oil country, right?
Yep.
And it was a company up there that was in oil field services, and this was during the heyday, so they were making incredible margins. And he said that, he goes, these guys were multi-million on paper, incredibly profitable
on paper.
But he said the problem was the payment terms when you're dealing with some of the giant, I'm not naming any of the big, but you know who they all are, all the big petrochemical ones. These are absolutely enormous. Now, it's going back years. I can't remember what he said, but it seems to me it was something like by the time they would get through everything, it was 180 days. And
wow.
He said the problem was, he said these guys had, it's the cash flow, because they had no cash flow. And he said the problem was you couldn't really do anything with these guys because they're behemoths. They don't care. They're not doing anything for you. They just go to a supplier. And he said they sold their business 10 cents on the dollar. And he said factoring would have not only saved their business, it would have made them millions. They had never heard of it. And so I was kind of like, oh, geez, there's a place for everything, right?
Yeah, and there's another myth, and I'm going to get back to this, but that's another myth that one size fits all, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so factoring, so yes, 100% agree, you got to have the margins. My example was the margins were too small, but it sounds like they were making a ton of margin. They just couldn't get it in. And you can also secure loans, which is not the same as factoring. You can have a secured credit line against your receivables, just depending on your situation. Absolutely. And you know what? And you can probably get private money to do that also, not just the bank. It's really fascinating.
And that's
what people don't know.
Exactly. And that's where people like you, like pros like you, are so valuable, where advisors can be so valuable, because you go in and say, okay, here's my problem. And it's like, yeah, okay, here's like some options. And they're like, I didn't know I had any options. Okay, well, let's start with the best one for you, but maybe the hardest one to get, down to maybe the worst one for you, but the easiest one to get. But let's see what your options are. It's it's like you mentioned, like business owners, they've come in, they start their business, and a lot of it they're learning on the fly. And there's a lot of bad habits developed that entire time that are bleeding out their profit, their revenue, and killing their cash flow.
Can I give you a preview on something that I'm planning to launch this year?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's called the Cash is Clear Maximizer.
Okay.
And I've got these 212 cash flow strategies. I have created videos on a bunch of them, but the people in my mastermind and my certification program, they have a hard time recalling them. And then I realized I can't even keep track of them all. You go into a client, you see the obvious ones. So I systematized it to be able to filter out and exclude certain things based upon the company information. And so it now takes me between 5 and 15 minutes to come up with a couple dozen strategies. I mean, I could come up with 100 strategies if they pertain, but you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And this is, I'm right now pilot testing it with the people I'm already working with, but that's going to be a huge tool. But it's not meant to replace what you're doing with Dry Run. Right? Because what you can do is then model the strategies and say, okay, what happens if we do this strategy? How does that impact the cash flow in reality?
Yep.
And so I'm excited about it because it's going to put it at fingertips and shortcut the learning cycle for people. It took me years, it took me decades, because spans industries, spans a lot of different experiences, and I've just been able to condense it down. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. And for what I look at is I get excited about things like that, because when people start using dry run and use it more and more and more and get the biggest benefits, is because they know kind of what they're trying to model out. They know sort of what they have to do. They're not sitting there going, I don't know where to start. It's like, oh man, what if I do this? What if I do that? Well, what if we, and you start pulling those levers, turning those dials and figuring out some really profitable answers. And and it grows on itself. These sorts of things, like you said, like you start somewhere and it starts to build. And like we've seen, I've talked about on other videos before, but when I, in my creative agency days, I started with cash flow when the 2008 kind of kicked our ass. And then what I started to realize was how lumpy that cash flow was. And then, well, that indicated that we had kind of a lumpy sales cycle. And then we started to look at how we smooth the sales cycle over. And on one side is how do we improve our cash flow, get paid faster, make sure it's much more reliable. And on the other side, how do we take those really low months and fill them up? And sometimes the peak months and actually push them out and lower them down. And what happens is it's not just cash flow. It's like I was fixing my cash flow, and guess what happened? I also increased our revenue a lot, and massively improved our profit margin, because I guess even shouldn't say our margins as much as pure profit, because there were months we were burning cash and didn't even know it, and suddenly you're in the black in those months, and it's basically pure profit that you had been flushing down the toilet, right?
That leads to another myth that I identified, and that is, you only need to pay attention to your cash flow if you have problems.
Oh, yeah, that one. Oh, that drives me nuts, that one.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're okay. We've got, the fact of the matter is, the absolutely most powerful cash flow strategies are when you have enough cash to invest in them. Yeah. And a lot of them are the opposite of the conventional wisdom. So here's a piece of conventional wisdom. Pay your payables slowly, right? That's how, you're improving your cash flow because you're pushing it out. But what if you can get a discount by paying on time, early, right? But nobody offers me a early payment discount, so who cares? Well, did you ever ask them? There's a strategy. Just call them up and say, hey, I've got extra cash. If I pay it today, will you give me a discount? And they might say no. Or there's another one. Pay cash, negotiate with whatever, a commercial negotiation, and then say, listen, these are the terms we just gave you. What would happen if we paid you half up front and half upon completion cash, right? Yeah. Well, that's actually two strategies. One is to pay sooner, and they might give you a discount for that, but I've actually done some of this negotiating and say, okay, I've got enough cash I could pay you in cash instead of a check. Would you give me an additional discount? Boing.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I could go on and on about the really great strategies where you increase your cash flow. But you're spending your cash faster. No, you're increasing your long-term cash flow.
Yeah.
You're decreasing it for a month. Who cares about a month? Because you're increasing it permanently by reducing your costs.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's other things like benefits that I know are there because I've dealt with them. We like our rule was always, despite what some of the bigger companies do, we pay our contractors, we pay everybody on time, all the time, forever, because you want them to like you and you want them to serve you, but it also long term will cost you more if you're paying late. Guaranteed, their prices are starting to, they're building in a margin to deal with you. So make sure you always take care of your contractors, right?
Absolutely. Look at COVID, what happened. There were shortages everywhere. People shortages, product shortages. And when it came to who do we ship to first, who are they going to ship to? You. Because you pay them up front or on time or whatever it is. You're a better... It's a competitive advantage. Absolutely.
And I got to go back to this because, boy, it's that one that you just brought up. They don't have cash flow problems. That one actually makes me so mad that the hair on the back of my neck stands up. When I hear a CPA or a bookkeeper I don't usually hear from businesses, but even sometimes a business like, we don't have cash flow problems. And they think it's, well, we're not going to run out of cash in the next 8 days, so they don't have a problem. And it's like, yeah, but it's not, we're not even talking about a problem. We're talking about an opportunity here. You can do so much with that business to improve everything about a business. The entire financial foundation of a business can be improved. And you just kind of get this shrug like, it's no big deal. They're not going to run out of cash that soon. It's such an archaic attitude.
It is, and there's so many proactive things you can do, even if you're okay. Now, I've known some companies that are rolling in cash. There's so few and far between. Let's put those aside. You do see companies that are okay, but they're not prepared, right? Well, let's get beyond 8 days. Let's say they've got 8 weeks of cash. It's one of the things.
And it's usually more like that.
Yeah, but we learned during the pandemic, 8 weeks can go really quickly.
Yes.
And when you say 8 weeks of cash, what does that really mean? Is that all your fixed costs? Is it your variable costs? And usually they don't really know that. And what are you doing with that cash? Well, it's in my checking account. Well, why are you leaving it there? Go put it in a money market fund earning 5%. Oh, I never thought of it. There's all these little ways to improve what you're doing when you've got the cash. Go get a credit line when you've got the cash. Sorry. Again, you can just keep going and going and going. And it's fun because you know the possibilities, the really positive possibilities.
Yeah, you can transform a business. And like you said, it's a bit like a fingerprint. That's where there's no, like you said, there's no just this works for everybody all the time. It's like, no, that's why you get a pro involved, and that's why you really put some thought into it, because you find what works for you, what opportunities do you have, who are your clients, what are sometimes the benefits of them, about what are some of the issues you have to deal with, and you can come up with something that'll work really well. And it's but it takes a little bit of time, and it's going to take some time to build that in. But man, it can make such a absolutely phenomenal difference to your business. You start building this stuff in now, and not only will you'll probably film the second half of 24, but 25 is going to be better cash flow, better profit, better revenue, it's all
and
tied
better
together,
opportunities to even improve more.
Exactly.
As a result,
it's what drives your growth. You need money to grow, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And for the accountants and bookkeepers out there, companies are looking for this. They don't realize it. So let's get one thing straight. A lot of business owners don't know the term cash flow. They just don't. They don't deal with cash flow. What do they deal with? I don't have enough money in the bank. I don't know how I'm going to make payroll in 2 weeks. Why are all my clients always paying me late? I mean, they see the symptoms, and that's the language they often use. And we interpret it and understand it as cash flow issues. So I try not to talk about, I introduce it as a topic when I'm talking to business owners and try to explain this is holistic, which you've already mentioned. And but I'm just pointing this out to bookkeepers and accountants because they will pay you. And guess what? You can measure a return on investment that you go from being an expense to actually making them money.
Making the money,
Yeah, and we're talking cold, hard cash / real profits, not theoretical profits. That are GAAP accounting profits.
And when I've heard of someone that wants to offer advisory, and they've gone in and said, "Well, ask my client," and they didn't want it. I'm like, "Yeah, I know exactly what you did. You either didn't say anything, or you walked in and said, do you have cash flow problems?" But instead of walking in and going, "I'm going to help you look forward in your business, and I'm going to help you first of all take control of that cash flow, so we can do more with it, and we improve your revenue, improve your profit. Here's how. Here's let's take a look at this business," and I can just identify even a few things off the top that are going to help you, and they can start to go, "Oh my God, they're going to help me improve and grow my business," because that's what they really care about, right? And it's that's not really a sales problem as much as, like we were talking all the way back to the start. It's a curiosity problem. Let's learn about your business and see how this puzzle all goes together.
Absolutely. You got to get a bit into the conversation to ask this question, but it's how are you sleeping at night? Mm-hmm. And they might not really tell you the truth, but you can see it in their eyes.
Yep.
That a lot of these business owners, even if they're doing okay, they are nervous. Yep. They are concerned, and they might not call it cash flow, but a lot of them will also open up and say, I'm not sleeping well. And if you ask the right questions, they'll go, how did you know to ask the question? Yeah.
And business owners, they're by nature, I think, optimistic. They're positive.
Yeah.
But they feel that stress and that weight. And I know up in Canada, there was an article just recently that said over half of the restaurants in Canada are losing money every month.
Yeah.
And if you ask someone out on the street, they'll say, "Oh, the restaurants are really busy." They might be really busy, but they can't seem to raise their prices enough to actually cover their costs, and they're just trying to survive. Yeah. And you see it. You raise the price a little bit, and it's like, oh my God, they raised their prices. Yeah, they're burning cash every month. They're trying to survive. Half of them, and that's a scary thing. And that's just one sector. And then you start looking at how many businesses are still. The pandemic might be over, but it's like, yeah, but what's still there is this the debt load, the effects, the increase in costs, the harder to get inventory, and all of these things that affect businesses. And there's a lot more out there that I think are just fighting every day to survive than people really realize. Yeah. And that's an opportunity again to go and help these business owners turn this around and kind of go like, let's move from burning cash to just at least breaking even and eking out a profit, right?
Yeah, I agree. And what's one of the things I like about talking to you is that you've got a business background. You're a business owner. You came from the advertising industry, right? Was it advertising?
Yeah, it was
graphic and design industry, stuff, right? Yeah. But you ran a business, and that's one of the interesting things. People sometimes think I'm an accountant, and I'm not. I have a business background. I ran divisions of publicly held companies. I was responsible for P&L, to make sure that the revenue is there at a margin that could sustain the expense, and there was left over for the company.
Yep.
Now, I never dealt with cash flow, though, because the companies were big enough, and I just didn't. That wasn't part of my deal. And yes, it was GAAP basis accounting, but you learn the levers. And then when I started working with small businesses, it became readily apparent, and all the levers still apply to a small business. Mm-hmm. And so that's what you're seeing, and that's why you're able to build your cash flow software, because you've lived through it, and the business modeling, you lived through it. Yeah. So it's great that you've got that perspective.
Yeah, I have so many hard lessons that I over the years, they're the ones that, it's not that you know it, it's when you understand it. They always say that. It's like you really, truly understand it. And that's, there's so many times where, that big aha moment of, oh my God, I can't believe how much we've left on the table because of how we were managing this or because how we were tracking this. And so dry run's one component of what we used to do in our business to make it work as an engine, right?
Right.
But it was one of the biggest ones was, and even with dry run, like it's cash flow is part of it, but all that scenario modeling, a huge part of it is if you have a cash flow shortfall today, it's because you had a sales problem 6 months ago or 3 months ago or whatever your cycle typically is. And so it's starting to look at, to drive cash flow, make sure you're staying on top of sales. And a lot of times small businesses, when it's high and they're running fast and they're busy, they forget to sell.
they shut down the pipeline.
Shut down the pipeline. Yeah. And nothing activates that pipeline more when you look at it and go, oh shit, we don't have enough work in June. And it's just like, we got to get out there and start selling. Yeah. But they need that motivation at the right time. And to see those opportunities. And sometimes it's also being able to turn away the job that might not be going like, that's not really going to move our business forward. Sometimes I just need the cash, and sometimes it's like, I can sit on that one and make sure we're getting the right client, that we have a gap here we can fill with a really good opportunity. there's a lot of these subtle things that move a business forward that aren't as quantitative, but boy, they can be the difference makers in a business.
Let me bring up another article. I like these two titles, and that might be why they come to mind. It's Fire Your Loser, again in parentheses, your loser clients, which basically says do an analysis. Which clients are costing you money? And you might say, some people, oh, it's impossible to tell. I can guarantee you that if you talk to Blaine or I, we could give you some really good guidance on how to figure out your profitable versus non-profitable clients. Yes. And the biggest ones might be your worst clients, right? You got the revenue, but you're losing money on it, or the margins are so low, and it's sucking up your time. And they generally are problem clients in addition to being low margin. Yeah. And so, and you can document it mathematically through your accounting. And you just say, let me introduce you to my favorite competitor who I really hate. And you can go, they'll treat you really well. Yeah. And you go give it to a competitor down the street and let them deal with it.
Yeah. We've for years, and I almost every entrepreneur I talk with, it's the exact same mindset as bad clients lead to bad clients and good clients lead to good clients, because they seem to hang out together, and they're in the same sector, the same mindset, and I know, like, I've done it before. I've done it. We've done pivots before in our business. We had to do an enormous one when I was talking in 2008, when the world came to a slamming halt. 70% of our revenue were coming from government agencies, and like we were doing tons of government work, but we knew when those budgets slam shut, they will be shut for years. And that's what we were hearing from internal, from the people in government were telling us that, and we just went, we have to shift, because commercial, like corporate, shut down ultra fast. It also opened up quickly, a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So we had this little lag where it's like we got a little bit of work coming in, but we have to shift over here because they're going to open up sooner. And a big part of it is you can't artificially kind of expand your team and all this kind of stuff. It's like we have to run with what we have, which means we have to have the right clients and the best clients. And some of the things we did was we got really disciplined on who those new clients were. Seems like a time like that you'll take anybody. No, we actually got more disciplined on who was the right client, who was going to help us move forward, who was going to be profitable. And we built that way, and we built our business that way. And one of the things I remember was our minimum contract value for a new contract for a new client kept going up and up and up and up, because we started to realize you wanted those clients that you were developing multi-year relationships with. Mm-hmm. You know, you're starting with a big project, and you get like a solid size project, and you get to vet them and see what they're like, and if they're good, you're like, now we've got a channel that is going to lead to more work through them and great referrals. We can't have the one and done that just get everybody tied in circles, and you're losing money on them, right?
You know, you've shifted your product strategy. Well, it made me think of a product thing, but it's really interesting because what you did basically is saying, this is the type of jobs, these are the types of products we want to deliver in a certain respect. I dealt with a lot more with hard goods in my corporate world, and I've dealt with a lot more service companies as a consultant. But it makes me think about, I had to do a turnaround. They literally said, David, you've got a year. If you can't turn around this division in a year, we'll shut it down. And I wasn't going to lose my job because my boss really liked me, and his boss really liked me, and that's what they said, good luck. See us in a year. One of the biggest differences, we immediately looked at profit margins for products, and we cut the low margin products that some cases we were losing money on. Yeah. So it's clients, but as a second part, it's product. Yeah. And people will panic and say, but wait a minute, it's going to go to our competitors. Well, that's okay, because we can't make money, so why are we competing against them?
Yeah, and I've literally talked with business owners that have told me, like, that we start again. You're asking questions, and I've had business owners tell me, well, that this product or this is a productized service, like one size fits all, one price. Do you know if you're making money off? Oh, we must be, because the number sounds so big, and then when you start asking them about all the other stuff, and they're like, oh my God, we must be, let's go do the math and find out they're losing money on it. And it's amazing how, like you said it, sometimes the biggest jobs are also the ones that can be the most dangerous. And we used to, like, those would scare us, some of the really big year and a half jobs, because you're like, if we're not careful, we'll lose our shirt on this one. There's potential, if we're really on the ball, we'll make good revenue and good profit. And this never want anything to sustain the business 100% or anything, but it can be like one of those really good. There's money coming in pretty much every month, and it can be a real foundation. But there's those issues. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, and you got to make sure you're making profit off of it. And how you're getting paid is so essential on getting the cash coming in. We had all kinds of little schemes we developed, again, systems and processes to make sure we could keep the cash flow moving, right?
Yeah. This is, our conversation. We keep opening up different little paths to go down. And as far as I'm concerned, we're only scratching the surface of any one topic.
Yeah.
And so, I would invite people to follow you, because you've got constant things about cash flow and business. Follow me and read my articles, because there's a lot to learn.
There's a lot to learn.
And it's outside of the box thinking.
Exactly. We could do your 212 cash flow topics. We could do an episode on every topic, and we'd still barely be getting into the depth on it. It would just help people identify some of the issues.
Yeah.
That's how much opportunity there is, but that's also how challenging it can be.
It is, and I've started documenting this. It's going up on my YouTube channel. Cash is Clear / just do a search on Cash is Clear, and you'll see the first half a dozen or so strategies. I'm doing one at a time, and you're right. I'm going through it quickly. It takes 10 to 15 minutes per strategy. At this rate, they won't be done for 2 to 3 years. We're trying to figure out a strategy to get them all up there this year / maybe into next year, because it's stuff that people can really learn from and open your minds up. And here's one quick hint for people. Take your common cash flow wisdom and reverse it, and it will probably make you money.
That's true.
Okay?
Yeah.
So we've talked a couple times about pay faster. Well, what if you were in good financial shape and you could let them pay longer, over time? Make it into payments. People will pay you more. That's a reverse strategy. And then there's offshoots of that is go find third-party credit companies that will work with you, that when they want to buy your product or service, they will they'll finance them. Sorry, my mind just went to somebody offered that financing for me because I'm getting into the price point where somebody might want financing. And so but I mean, think about how specialized that is.
Yeah.
Financing for training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're out there.
Yeah. And this is we've actually gone quite a ways here, David. We're gonna have to do another episode, a few episodes down the road here, because I know we can talk for another 5 hours on this stuff. But how do people track you down? How do they get hold of you? I know it's cashesclear.com, but how else can they find you?
Well, on LinkedIn, you see my name, David Saphir. But let me make an offer. Call me. And if you do, as of this recording, you will be the first person that I've invited to call. There's one guy who actually tracked me down, which is awesome, off of a podcast. And he became a client of mine. But my phone number, here it is. I'm in the United States, so it's country code 1. And I'm on WhatsApp also. If you're too shy to call, use WhatsApp. 1-801-510-3566. And Blaine, I'd invite you to put that into the show notes.
I will. Send me that number, and so I didn't jot it down, but yeah, send me
Will
that.
do.
I'll get it into the show notes so the guys, you'll be able to get hold of David, cashlessclear.com, and we'll get all the other contact info. Make sure you reach out, and he can get you sorted. And tell me just a tiny bit before we wrap this about your training, like the different training things that you offer. A little bit of who should be calling you and how can you help them.
So my flagship is a cash flow advisory certification. So it's a combination of virtual training, videos, downloads, workbooks, and that you can do at your own pace. I've had somebody do it in as little as about 3 days. Other people have taken 6 months. So it's okay either way. Mm-hmm. But with that, we also do masterminds. And that's where people are going, that's where the light bulbs are really going off, because we do case studies. We will say, bring a client. If you can, bring the financials, get rid of the name. But if you can't do that, just tell us about it and let's work it out. Mm-hmm. Let's think about your client and what you could do to offer. We're using the Cash is Clear Maximizer and practicing with that. So it's a lot of fun. We've got a good group that we're working with, and there's actually some cross-pollination going on where some people are tax keepers, but they don't do bookkeeping. Sorry, there's no such thing as a tax keeper. Do tax returns, and they don't do bookkeeping, so there's referrals that way and back and forth. So it's a good group of people that we're working with. As a matter of fact, a few of them are actually your clients.
Oh, nice. Terrific. That's
yeah.
And we know there's an opportunity out there. Like, we see it every day. We're talking with business owners every day, and most of them literally, some have told me, like, I'm coming when I find the right person, when I have that help. Like, they're dying for this, and I'm just like, guys, just go talk with your clients and have a really meaningful conversation. Don't try and sell them. Have a conversation with them. Ask them a bunch of questions, and you'll find an opportunity right there.
Blaine, and that's one of the things we work on with the mindset. I've put together an advisory blueprint because a lot of people haven't actually done advisory. How do you do the discovery? How do you figure out what the problems are? How do you put together a proposal? How do you all that stuff? I've got templates for everything, but it's one of the big issues that you're going from doing bookkeeping and accounting and tax returns into advisory, and nothing gives me a bigger charge than we talk about a situation and then somebody goes out and does it with their client and they come back and said, it worked just like you said it would. Yes, this really does work because they need you.
Yeah. So
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's the thing. They need you. They need your smarts. They don't, like you said, this. They can't run their business off of a blog post with a one size fits all at the bottom. They need someone that has expertise and knowledge. And now you're just blending in some of those skills that are going to help you have those conversations and identify some of the issues. This has been great, David. Well, we will definitely have to do this again. But thanks so much for being on the show. And a reminder, everyone, go chat with David, connect with him on LinkedIn, give him a phone call. He'll have the phone number right there for you. And again,
tell him that Blaine sent you.
Yeah, exactly. Tell him Blaine sent you. And again, I'm Blaine with Dry Run. Please come visit us at dryrun.com. We'll help you get set up and forecast your cash flow. Literally, we got a little wizard. We'll get you set up in a few minutes, and we'll have you from importing importing your data all the way through to modeling scenarios in a few minutes and really truly understanding where your business is going or where your client's business is going so you can have those conversations. Thanks again, David. This was a great chat.
Thank you, Blaine.